She wrote it herself, 4 words, on a post-it note, found in her own home during a police search, not a confession typed on a screen, not a message sent to someone else, a handwritten note, in her own handwriting, pressed onto a piece of paper no bigger than your palm. It said, "I am evil, I did this." And then underneath those words, a list. A handwritten list of the names of the babies she had been accused of harming. Some names ticked, some circled, some with question marks beside them. A nurse in a neonatal intensive care unit, where the most fragile human beings on earth, babies born too early, too sick, too small to survive without help, were placed in the care of people whose entire job was to keep them alive. She kept a list. That note was shown to the jury at the Countess of Chester Hospital murder trial in 2023. And the courtroom went so quiet that the judge had to check whether people were still breathing. But here is the detail that has divided the entire world since that verdict came in. The detail that put a Netflix documentary trending globally in February 2026. The detail that has medical experts, statisticians, legal professionals, and 14 international scientists standing up and saying the same thing. They got it wrong. They say Lucy Letby, sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of release for the murders of 7 babies, did not kill anyone. That the babies died because of a hospital system so broken and so desperate to protect itself that it needed someone to blame. And that it chose the quiet nurse who volunteered for extra shifts and took salsa classes and lived with her 2 cats and had no forensic evidence, no eyewitnesses, no CCTV, and no motive connecting her to a single death. A post-it note and a pattern on a rota. That was it. Today, we are going to the Countess of Chester Hospital in Cheshire, England. We are going to sit inside the most controversial criminal conviction in modern British history. We are going to meet the babies who died. We are going to examine every piece of evidence the prosecution had and every argument the experts are making against it. And we are going to ask the question that millions of people around the world are asking right now. Is Lucy Letby a serial killer? Or is she the most catastrophic, wrongful conviction of the 21st century? Before we go to that hospital ward, before we stand in the neonatal unit and understand what the doctors noticed in the spring of 2015, you need to know who Lucy Letby was before she became a headline. Not the courtroom, not the Netflix documentary. Her. Lucy Letby was born on January 4, 1990. She grew up in Hereford, in the west of England. By all accounts of every person who knew her before any of this began, she was unremarkable in the best possible way. Quiet, dedicated, the kind of person who shows up, who volunteers for extra shifts, who cares about the job in a way that makes the people around her trust her with the most important things. She attended the University of Chester. She studied child nursing. She did her university placement at the Countess of Chester Hospital, the same hospital where everything would eventually happen. And after graduating, she went straight back, not because she had nowhere else to go, because she wanted to be there, because neonatal intensive care was what she had chosen and she was committed to it. She had been working in that unit for 3 years by the time the spring of 2015 arrived. She was 25 years old. She knew those babies. She knew their families. She knew the rhythms of that ward the way you know the rhythms of a place you have given years of yourself to. And then the deaths began. Not all at once, not dramatically, the way these things always begin, quietly. In a unit where babies are already critically ill, where the margin between survival and death is measured in moments and milligrams, and the precise decisions of people under enormous pressure. A death in a neonatal unit is not inherently suspicious. It is in the most devastating way sometimes expected. These are the smallest and most fragile patients in any hospital. They die, sometimes despite everything that is done correctly. Sometimes because of things that go wrong, despite the best intentions of everyone in the room. But the consultants at the Countess of Chester began to notice something. The deaths were clustering, and the one constant in every cluster was Lucy Letby. The pattern that the doctors identified was this. When Letby was on shift, unexpected deaths and collapses occurred at a significantly higher rate than when she was not on shift. The lead consultant, Dr. Stephen Brary, became convinced that something was wrong. He raised it internally. He pushed for an investigation. He pushed for Letby to be removed from patient care. The hospital management resisted. They commissioned their own reviews. They told the consultants they were wrong. They moved Letby to administrative duties, not because they believed she was dangerous, but because they needed to manage the situation without admitting what the situation might be. She wrote a letter to management saying she felt unfairly treated. She was returned to clinical duties. More babies died. Eventually, in July of 2017, the hospital referred the case to Cheshire Police. It took 5 more years before the trial began. In October of 2022, Lucy Letby sat in a courtroom in Manchester and entered a not guilty plea on every single one of the 22 charges against her. 7 counts of murder, 15 counts of attempted murder, covering the deaths and collapses of 17 babies between June 2015 and June 2016. She sat through 145 days of trial, one of the longest murder trials in British legal history. She said nothing publicly. She showed no emotion in court that observers could read clearly. She was described by some as expressionless. Others said they saw someone who was terrified and overwhelmed and unable to process what was being done to her in that room. In August of 2023, the jury found her guilty. 7 counts of murder, 7 counts of attempted murder, 15 sentences, no possibility of release. The judge told her she was a cruel, calculated, and cynical serial killer. Lucy Letby has maintained her innocence from the first day of her arrest to today. Here is where this case becomes something that demands your full attention. Because the conviction of Lucy Letby did not settle anything. It opened something. Something that has been getting louder and more specific and more internationally credible since the moment the verdict came in. The prosecution's case rested on 3 things. The statistical pattern. She was the only nurse present at every death and collapse. The medical evidence. Expert witnesses testified that the injuries to the babies were consistent with deliberate harm. Air injected through feeding tubes. Insulin administered without prescription. Milk deliberately overfed into tiny stomachs. And the post-it note. Let us take these in order, because each one has been challenged in ways that the Netflix documentary makes impossible to ignore. The statistical argument that the pattern of deaths clustering around Letby's shifts proves she was responsible has been torn apart by professional statisticians worldwide. The argument being made is that this kind of analysis is deeply flawed, that in any hospital unit, deaths and shifts will correlate with certain staff members by chance, that the absence of an alternative suspect does not make the present person guilty. That correlation, even strong correlation, is not causation. Dr. Norman Fenton, a professor of risk information management at Queen Mary University of London, said the statistical analysis used in the prosecution was fundamentally flawed and should never have been presented as evidence. He said it was the kind of reasoning that convicts innocent people. The medical evidence is where the international expert panel landed hardest. A 14-member group of scientists from multiple countries reviewed the medical records of the babies. Their conclusion, released in February of 2025, was that the deaths were consistent with natural causes in premature and sick infants. That the specific injuries cited by prosecution witnesses as evidence of deliberate harm had alternative medical explanations. That the hospital itself had documented problems with its neonatal unit. Staffing issues, equipment problems, infection control failures that could explain the elevated death rate without requiring a murderer. A doctor who testified for the prosecution, Dr. Dewey Evans, later said that prosecutors had misrepresented his research in ways he was not aware of during the trial. And then the post-it note, here, before we go any further. Because we just arrived at the part of this case that splits people completely down the middle. And I want you in it before I tell you what the defense says about that note. You have just heard 3 arguments, statistical, medical, and forensic, all being made by credentialed international experts against the conviction of Lucy Letby. You have heard that there is no CCTV evidence, no eyewitness evidence, no forensic evidence placing her at the scene of a specific harm, no motive that anyone has been able to credibly establish. And you know about the post-it note that said, "I am evil. I did this. So here is what I want from you right now." Before the defense explanation of that note, before we go any further into this case, in the comments, tell me where you stand right now. Right at this moment, with everything you have heard so far. Do you think Lucy Letby killed those babies? Or do you think the pattern and the note and the testimony of overwhelmed doctors in a struggling hospital sent an innocent woman to prison for the rest of her life? Tell me, because this case divides people who follow it closely in a way that almost no other criminal case does. And your instinct right now, before I give you the rest of it, is worth knowing. Subscribe right now. Hit that notification bell. The Criminal Cases Review Commission in the UK is currently reviewing Letby's case. A public inquiry into the hospital's handling of the deaths is ongoing. When a development comes, and investigators and legal experts believe one is coming, this channel will be here immediately. Share this video. One more person who sits with this case, one more signals. Now the post-it note, and what Lucy Letby says it actually means. The post-it note that said, "I am evil, I did this," was found by police during a search of Letby's home. It was presented to the jury as a confession, as the words of a woman who knew what she had done and had written it down in a moment of private acknowledgement. The defense argued something different. They argued the note was not a confession, that it was the product of a woman in psychological collapse. A woman who had been suspended from her job, who was being investigated for crimes she said she did not commit, who was under a pressure so extreme and so isolating that she had begun to internalize the accusations against her. That the note was the expression of a broken person absorbing what everyone around her was telling her she was. Not a statement of fact. The defense called it a manifestation of her mental state at the time. Not guilt, despair. The jury did not accept that explanation. But here is the thing about that note that the Netflix documentary puts on screen and leaves there without resolving it. Lucy Letby, in her police interviews, in the footage that Netflix obtained and aired for the first time, sat across from detectives and said clearly, quietly, consistently, "I have only ever done my best for those babies." She did not confess in interview. She maintained throughout days of questioning that she had not harmed anyone, that she did not understand why this was happening to her, that she was innocent. A woman who had written, "I am evil, I did this," on a post-it note, sat in an interview room and said she had only ever done her best. Which version of Lucy Letby is real? That is the question that 14 international scientists and a Netflix documentary and millions of people across the world cannot stop asking. The babies deserve to be named, not as evidence, not as case numbers, as the people they were, however briefly, and the families who lost them. Baby A, Baby B, Baby C, Baby D, Baby E, Baby F, Baby G, 7 babies. Given letters instead of names by the court to protect the privacy of their families. Most of them born prematurely. Most of them already fighting for their lives before any of the events that led to this trial began. Their parents sat through 145 days of a trial that described in clinical detail what was allegedly done to their children. They came to court because they needed to be there, because they needed answers, because a hospital had told them their babies died of natural causes, and then the police had come and said something different, and then years of legal process had placed them in a courtroom where a woman was on trial for ending their children's lives. Some of those parents believe completely in the verdict. They believe Lucy Letby killed their babies, and they believe the justice system delivered the right outcome. Some of those parents are less certain. Some have said publicly that they do not know what to believe anymore, that the expert challenges to the medical evidence have created doubts they did not have before, that if there is any possibility that their babies died of natural causes, of the complications of prematurity and illness in an under-resourced unit, they need to know that. Because if the babies died naturally, then what happened to Lucy Letby is one of the most devastating miscarriages of justice in British legal history. And if the babies were killed, then the families deserve the absolute certainty of knowing that the right person is in prison. Right now, that certainty does not exist outside that courtroom. Not for the international experts. Not for the legal professionals reviewing the case. Not for the millions of people who watched a Netflix documentary in February 2026 and came away more uncertain than they went in. Here is the second place I need to stop and sit with you today. Because this case asks something of everyone who follows it that most true crime cases do not ask. Most cases have a clear answer. A DNA match. A confession that held. A body of forensic evidence that points in one direction without serious scientific dispute. This case has none of those things. What it has is a pattern, a note, the testimony of doctors under pressure in a hospital that was failing, and a woman who has said from the first moment to the last, "I did not do this." So I want to ask you something direct. Drop it in the comments. If the Criminal Cases Review Commission refers Lucy Letby's case back to the Court of Appeal, and if that appeal overturns her convictions, what does justice look like for the families of those 7 babies? What does it look like for Lucy Letby? And what does it say about a justice system that put her away for life on evidence that 14 international scientists say should never have convicted anyone? Tell me, because that question has no comfortable answer, and it deserves to be asked. Subscribe to the Cold Case Signals. Ring that notification bell. Share this video. 1 share. One more person who sits with this case. One more signal. Lucy Letby is 36 years old. She is currently held at HMP Bronzefield in Surrey, a women's prison. She is serving 15 life sentences with a whole life order. She will never be released under the current conviction. She has appealed twice. Both appeals were refused. Her legal team has applied to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the independent body that investigates potential miscarriages of justice in England and Wales. The CCRL can refer a case back to the Court of Appeal if it finds there is a real possibility that a conviction is unsafe. The review is ongoing. The Thirlwall Inquiry, a formal public investigation into how the Countess of Chester Hospital handled the deaths and the management failures that surrounded them, is also ongoing. Its findings are expected to say things about the hospital's internal culture and decision-making that will be deeply uncomfortable for the institution. A hospital that resisted the concerns of its own consultants, that moved a nurse to administrative duties and then returned her to clinical care, that may have had systemic failures that contributed to elevated death rates in a unit that was already under severe pressure. Whether those failures explain the deaths or whether Lucy Letby's actions do, is the question that the CCRL review and the Thirlwall inquiry are both circling. From inside HMP Bronzefield, Lucy Letby has said nothing publicly since the verdict. She does not need to. The world is saying enough on her behalf. Scientists, statisticians, legal professionals. A Netflix documentary trending globally. A case review body examining whether she should ever have been convicted at all. And 7 families who lost babies in a hospital that was failing them. Who need the truth above everything else. Who deserve, regardless of what that truth turns out to be, to know with absolute certainty what happened to their children. That certainty has not arrived yet. Maybe it never fully will. Before you go, I want to leave you with the one question this entire case rests on. The one question that a post-it note and 15 life sentences and 14 international scientists and a Netflix documentary and a Criminal Case Review Commission have all been circling for years without landing. When Lucy Letby wrote, "I am evil, I did this," what was she confessing to? And if she was not confessing, what was she saying? Drop your answers in the comments. Tell me what you think those 4 words mean, because I think the answer to that question is the answer to this entire case. Subscribe to the Cold Case Signals. Ring that notification bell. Share this video. One more person who hears those 4 words. One more signal sent from a neonatal ward in Chester into a world that is still trying to understand what happened there. We have more cases coming, more signals, more stories told the way they deserve, with depth, with truth, and with absolute respect for every person at the center of them. The babies, the families, and a woman in a prison cell who says she is innocent. We see you all. I will see you on the next signal.